How's it going, everyone? It's me, Vivi, and welcome to my in-depth analysis of the extended demo of Ratchet Clank Rift Apart, which we got to see at Gamescom. So yeah, I'm not gonna say much during the introduction, so yeah, with that said, I really hope you guys enjoy this one, alright? Let's get started. So looking at this beautiful demo startup screen, we get a glimpse of what I believe to be the 3D audio of Rift Apart. The PlayStation 5 utilizes what we call the Tempest engine. That's basically the whole 3D sound coming from the game. And Insomniac Games likes to call this 3D spatial audio. If you listen to this demo startup screen, you can hear particular sounds left and right. For example, the beetle we saw in Sargasso during the June reveal, you can hear it on the right side of your headphones. You can really hear how the sound just moves around slowly and gets louder. You know, natural sounds you hear. That's what the PlayStation 5 is all about. That's the 3D audio Sony is aiming for. Now, instead of the traditional 3D simulation the other games had in the past, you know how your character gets closer and you hear the sound louder? Well, the PlayStation 5 really aims at giving more of that, like I just said, natural sound. Sony's current focus is to give us 3D audio through headphones ultimately. The sounds I was describing right now, you can hear them wearing headphones. Not convinced? Well, Sony did also show the Pulse 3D wireless headset, which is of course an optional purchase. But with time, we could be expecting the same with usual speakers on your television. Mark Cerny said this will be a year-by-year process. Speakers or sound systems in your home today utilize Dolby Atmos, but the PlayStation 5 won't be utilizing Dolby Atmos. They have their own complete custom-built audio. Although the sounds sound cool and all, unfortunately you'll only get to hear these sounds through headphones. So yeah, let's move on. Looking at the introduction. Since we're dealing with dimensional rifts, am I crazy to think that those could be critters from All For One? Creatures that mainly inhabited planet Magnus. And if you're wondering, All For One is a game that released back in 2011. They simply remind me of one, I don't know. Out of all creatures out there, I thought of the critters, or creatures if you want to call them that. Now I can't seem to recognize any of these organic life forms, except that guy. That organic life form right there reminds me of a Terranoid from Up Your Arsenal. Except, you know, built differently. Rift Apart feels so much more lively. Look at how our duo appear through a rift, and then quickly we have civilians reacting to our duo showing up. Now I wonder why they're afraid of Ratchet and Clank. Methinks they overheard the enemies looking for Ratchet and Clank. They're simply afraid to get stuck in between the chaos once the guards, let's call them, find these two. Notice how their eyes, everyone's eyes reflect the light, the scenery and all. This is what we call the PlayStation 5's global illumination. It's a more advanced form of ray tracing. Notice how that light effect causes shadows on the bench even. Rift Apart is beautiful to showcase all of this fidelity. You basically have rays of light per pixel basis bouncing off from multiple surfaces in this game. You can even notice that reflective touch onto Ratchet's eyes. I mean, look at that. As for Ratchet's fur and Clank's shiny metallic body, I mean, look at this guy. He's so shiny. You know, ray tracing has a bunch of different forms, but people generally just use the term ray tracing. In this case, people like to use the term ray tracing to describe Ratchet and Clank, how light mainly focuses on these two characters, how the fur pops up, Clank's shiny metallic body, all that reflection. Next thing we're going to look at, Megalopolis versus Megapolis. Okay, what's up with that? The first time I read Megalopolis, I was like, hold up, that sounds familiar. We have Planet Endako and Going Commando, the second installment in the Ratchet & Clank series released back in 2003. Within Planet Endako lies the city of Megapolis, not Megalopolis, but Megapolis. Megalopolis is, yes, similar to Megapolis, but with an extra syllable. For those curious, Megapolis from Going Commando, the second game in the series, was where Clank had his first apartment. The apartment also made cameos in Up Your Arsenal's intro sequence, the ending of Size Matters, and the ending of Secret Agent Clank as well. Now what we're all wondering, is Megalopolis supposed to be Megapolis? If this is the new Megapolis, then oh my rip you a new one, this is gorgeous to look at. what we have to put our focus on, as well, two things. Megapolis lied within the Bolgon galaxy. We do have Easter eggs of Bolgon, aka Megacorp and all the Protopets, which you'll see later on in the video. And two, what Ratchet tells Clank, we're back? Back as in, hey, I remember this place from long ago. Or, we're back as in, we're back again to the same spot we were before. I believe the latter because of what Clank says afterwards, and not far from where we last saw him. They luckily wound up here again, is what I presume. You know, they're looking for Dr. Nefarious. Another thing, since we're dealing with dimensions and alternate favorites according to this tweet from last June, for example, how Sargasso is an alternate version of the Sargasso we know in Tools of Destruction, a game released back in 2007, well, Megalopolis, for all we know, could be an alternate version of, say, Megapolis from Going Commando, hence the extra syllable. Or, this could be a misspelling on Insomniac Games' part, thus this being part of our universe, or dimension, or timeline, or reality. An alternate version means this is another dimension, reality, or universe. Again, there's a bunch of terms that seems to be interchanged around. If this were the case, the people in this universe know who Ratchet and Clank are. Clank also believes they can put a stop to this. They know who's behind it, and I'll get to this later on in the video, so stay tuned. Next up, Goon for Less. Now this is interesting, and funny, I find. Instead of what we knew about these guys, you know, the Thugs for Less, they are now called Goon for Less, not plural, singular form. It makes you think if this thug alone is titled Goon for Less, hence the singular form, it could be possible their group has different ranks among them. Which sounds like a cool concept if you think about it. Also, yeah, I believe the civilians before knew that Goon for Less would show up, thus everyone panicking. And yeah, their ship confirms it's them. From the reveal trailer from back in June, it was a bit hard to tell whose ship that was from far away. I mean, you could see a goon come out of there, but from a quick glance it was hard to tell. Here it's made much more obvious. Alright, since we are dealing with dimensions, here's three things I'm gonna put on screen. A, an alternate version of Thugs for Less in an alternate world, aka Megalopolis. B, Thugs for Less we know, but rebranded from our universe or dimension. And yeah, we are still in our universe, that's B. C, Thugs for Less we know, but somehow followed us in this other dimension, thanks to a certain someone. These guys were hired by Dr. Nefarious, I believe, and you'll understand more later. Now, which scenario do you believe is more likely, A, B, or C? Since Goon for Less is new to us, and with this dimensional rift going on, we can't help but imagine different possible scenarios naturally. What could perhaps also depict that these guys are alternates, their accents. Last time we saw Thugs for Less was Into the Nexus, released in 2013. They were hired by Neft in Prague. They sounded Russian in that version. Then again, their group could have multiple different origins, or nationalities, so I don't think it's a strong telltale sign just yet.
Sir, we are within striking distance of the Nebulorks.
Hey, I think I found the Wombats!
Again, notice how there's shadows everywhere. His sword even blocking the light, causing a shadow around his left shoulder. And how the ship's orange window reflects the surrounding light nearby. That is very nice to look at. Okie dokie. Before we enter gameplay, just look at how the camera moves as we transition to gameplay. This pose right here reminds me of this screenshot from the 2016 reimagining. I find it very iconic. Now the elephant in the room. Civilians running everywhere. I absolutely love this. It makes the scene look much more intense. Unlike anything we've ever seen in the series. You civilians running around, right? Alright, let's pause it right here. The HUD has been altered slightly. The circular weapon icon compared to the short demo build we got on June 11th, the HUD has been made smaller. The ammo capacity at level 1 for the burst pistol decreased from 150 to 120. The icon itself even looks different. Now what's also different in this gameplay? By the way, we're no longer looking at pre-alpha, the watermark, bottom left corner. It's gone. So this has gone further into development. Okay, as I was saying, we can now see our gun level up meter in the HUD. It's around the weapon icon. I don't know if, for trailer purposes, but the rate at which the weapon gains experience is quite a lot. Like I said, it could be for trailer purpose. And for the upgrade, well, you'll see it later on in the gameplay. Weapon ammo capacity is also on the target icon in the center. It appears they kept that in from what we saw from the previous June 11th gameplay. And why did they go with this idea? I assume because the HUDs are so much smaller now compared to what we had back in the day, bulky and big on screen. Since they're so small now, Insomniac Games probably gives us the option to focus what's on screen, so with that, they thought of the idea of putting the ammo in the center. Enemy AI is something alright. They dodge, they hide, they sneak around. The area in the back, by the way, is where we'll find ourselves later, after the train sequence. The door right there right now is shut, but we'll get there shortly. When the ship lands close to the ground, the environment gets impacted as well. Look at how the trees just sway, shake in the wind. When the crates explode, there's a visible shockwave now, and everything around it just flies around. The quick select menu still can hold 8 weapons, which is a staple of the series. However, it is unknown if we'll have multiple quick selects just yet. You know, move left and right using the shoulder buttons on your controller to put even more weapons in the quick select. This game is also very newcomer friendly. How it says to press triangle to bring up the weapon wheel, what we like to call the quick select for longtime fans. The weapon wheel or quick select now shows your experience bar of the weapon, which I find pretty useful. Okay. Shatter Bomb's capacity ammo has been lowered. We went from 9 to 8. Switching weapons also gives you a slight brief window of chance to adjust yourself. The enemies seem to slow down for 1 second after you exit the quick select. Not sure? Pay close attention to the way the bolts slow down for a second. Switching weapons is also animated now, just like the good old PlayStation 2 days. The Future Saga completely removed that feature and weapon switching was very static. Now I did notice a static moment in this gameplay. When you switch between weapons, you know, switching back to the burst pistol, it seems static. Killing a goon rewards you with 25% experience already. Naturally, the rate will decrease as you further upgrade your weapon. In other words, it's going to get harder to upgrade your weapon as you reach a higher level. Are my eyes bad? Or does the Shatter Bomb have more particles than before? Now look, the magnitude of the explosion looks about the same, but there's more particles. The target icon has also changed. Looks not only smaller, but it now has more detail into it. You see it better right here on the crates. When hitting the crates, there's a loud click noise I've noticed. I'm gonna play the sequence so you know what I'm talking about. I have no idea if that's intentional or simply an audio glitch. Speaking of potential glitches, the goon clips through the bench. There's even something hiding behind the crate. When you break the crates, it disappears. It could be a civilian, it could be a critter. Whatever it is, there is something moving behind it. Notice how your health experience is also increasing in this extended demo. Health itself has also decreased from 20 to 10. It makes you wonder, is this early gameplay? Well, Herman Hulst, the head of Worldwide Studios, stated that dimensional travel like this, well, what you'll see after is mid-gameplay. But then we have Marcus Smith, creative designer at Insomniac Games, saying that the demo takes place early in the game, so which one are we supposed to believe? I'm gonna lean on what Marcus Smith said, that this does indeed look like early game. As for the weapons, well, the PlayStation 5's Dualsense controller not only will have an adaptive trigger, which I'll give an example later, but also haptics, where you feel the weapon you're using in your hands. You'll get these different types of sensations coming out of the controller. What you don't get to see, of course, is that you can feel this rift coming with a PS5 DualSense controller. Like, the energy of a portal is sort of its own unique sensation. You get a sense of the distance of it, because the haptics add so much sort of texture to that experience. Says game director at Insomniac Games Mike Daly. You can feel the pulse of the bomb shattering, fading away. The burst pistol will make you feel this satisfying click, for example. Ratchet's new hover move using his Rift Tether, from what we've seen, you can hover left, right, forward, and backwards. When ammo is full, you get a pop-up on screen. When enemies are down, at least for Gunferless, a couple of seconds remain, they turn to dust and Bolt appears. They take about 12 to 13 hits with your burst pistol. We killed, like 5 goons with the burst pistol? Well, the explosive crate helped us, but it didn't add experience to the weapon. So basically, 5 goons equals to 75% experience gained. Also, when we use our weapons, I've noticed that the HUD tends to move a little. As the train pulls away, we have civilians, I believe, just staring at us. As we make progress, hitting the wall gives off a sound. Maybe it's something that's already been present in the series? I think I never paid attention to that. Now I wonder if that clicking noise we got before is in fact hitting a surface, us hitting a surface other than crates. Then again, the wall facing the crates in this scene is pretty far away. Does our wrench have that wide of a range? The ammo now emits a yellow glow and persists for a short while. Nanotech emits white sparkle, I believe. Now looking at some posters or portraits or photos. The one on the right at the entrance, is from All For One, released in 2011. Another here from All For One as well. Now what's funny, we only got Ratchet & Clank in this shot. Quark and Nefarious are also in the concept when you look at the whole picture. So Quark and Nefarious being absent from that portrait, is it intentional? You know, not to get our hopes up on Quark appearing, let alone Nefarious. I mean, we're about to see Nefarious, so this could be their way of not spoiling what's to come. The one that looks like it has a white mountain-like structure, it's early concept of Into the Nexus, titled Ancient City. It's from the 15th anniversary art book, published or released back in June 2018. Ancient cities set at the precipice of what seemed like that planet's edge. Buildings and structures were constructed on the fossils of giant creatures from eons past. Now, moving towards the exit, we have 2 pieces of concept as well. The one on the right appears to be a tower from All For One. These towers are also from Luminopolis. The closest thing I could find, concept-wise, are these architectures from the art book. Wait a minute, Luminopolis, Megalopolis, are these alternate versions? I mean, we are dealing with dimensional rifts after all. There's a lot of All For One concepts I've come to realize. I wonder if it's supposed to hint at something. The one on the left, we'll see it later, clearer at a better angle. Okay, wait a minute. Since the civilians know Ratchet & Clank, that would explain why Nefarious and Quark are absent from this piece of concept, because the civilians only see Ratchet & Clank as the hero who went on those adventures. As for the ancient city, well, okay. Vivi, you're saying that all of these posters on the wall tell the adventures that Ratchet & Clank went through? Perhaps. That explains why they know our heroes. But what about the ancient city that never appeared in the series? Yeah, so about that. Again, since we're dealing with multiverses, there could be doubles, other Ratchet & Clanks out there, and they're simply confusing us with their own Ratchet & Clank they know. And we'd like to believe that this alternate Ratchet & Clank visited the ancient city, but it could be a bit of a reach. Even more concepts are hiding in there. There is 6 different types, if I'm not mistaken. Looking at these books or pamphlets, they're so detailed you can even see a page split. Also, when we hit the stand, it glows up. I'm really not sure if that's intentional. So yeah, like I was saying, we can see 6 different types. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 1, the ancient city from Into the Nexus. Number 2, the terawatt power station from All For One. 3, I really don't know. I probably spent way too long trying to figure this one out. I'm guessing it's also from All For One, just comparing its environment to the one we had before, up on the wall. Number 4, the closest one that seems to match the front cover and back, assuming it's folded. This one is from Planet Yerek from Into the Nexus. Number 5, Planet Yerek maybe. There's a lot of water. It seems to be similar to this one. Number 6, absolutely no clue. The idea is, all these locations could be where our duo's adventures happened. Due to their popular status in the galaxy, they have a bunch of pictures around. Walls, books, pamphlets, everything. Now, before we start talking about Dr. Nefarious, there's this one poster in the back that caught my attention. Are those supposed to be Drawfids? I just couldn't help but notice. They're like fish species that originate from tools of destruction, and were part of Tachyon's Imperial Army. Specifically, the Drawfid Trooper. Not saying this means Tachyon will appear and turn out to be the main villain, you know, that would be cool and all, but just saying. After all, with all these dimensional rifts appearing everywhere, it's possible Tachyon, along with Artemis Zog from the comics, a compiled version which published in 2011 by the way if you had no idea, while those events happened after a crack in time. They could have escaped via one of those rifts. If not, then Drawfids in this dimension are part of another army serving under someone else. If we are in our universe with posters of Drawfids, I mean, it makes you wonder, who hired them and why? And why do we have posters lying around Megalopolis? The original intent of this Drawfid army was stated by Tachyon. Greetings, inferior beings of Polaris. Does your life lack a sense of purpose? Do you constantly worry about finding steady income? Do you like killing stuff? Then join the Imperial Army and aid me in my humble quest for galactic domination. Here you will travel to new places, meet interesting people, and execute them in the name of me. Are we even in Polaris? That's the question. If this is Megapolis from Going Commando, then this is Bogon. All in all, if this is a different universe they traveled to, the rules are simply different. If Tachyon were really here, I think he'd try and get rid of Nefarious, which we're about to see now. Then again, think back to what I said, how Marcus Smith explained that the demo was early stuff from the game. And could you imagine that Nefarious is not the actual true villain? That would be one heck of a twist, if I do say so myself. So yeah, without further ado, let's talk about Dr. Nefarious. Before we dive into the meat of the story and trying to wonder who or what the heck is happening even, let's take a look at his model. First and foremost, yes, Armin Shimmerman, the original voice of Dr. Nefarious, is reprising his role, and I am excited to hear his performance once again. His voice sounds more robotic in Rift Apart, I've noticed, or am I just crazy? Here's a clip of his voice from All for One, when he voiced Nefarious back in 2011.
You should know that even as I was wishing the Blarg would tear you apart limb from limb so I could river dance around your smoldering, squishy carcass. Put down the Dimensionator! Yeah, right. Today I will finally be free of the both of you!
Is it just me who notices the more robotic tone? What do you think? Next, his color scheme. Last time we saw him purple was in All for One, so I guess they're sticking to that. Usually, he's blue. Up Your Arsenal released in 2004, and then he appeared blue again in A Crack in Time, released in 2009. Next, the globe on his head looks much clearer now. Less of a deeper green going on. The crack on his skull is missing. Now his crack on the skull, or globe, or dome, happened in A Crack in Time. So where's the crack? Before we jump to conclusions, let's look at his design more. His eyes. If one thing looks different and is made very obvious, his eyes. Not only do they vary in size as he expresses different moods, but the color as well. We always had that deep red eyes of his. Maybe the global lighting of this game plays a factor here, and maybe we'll see that deeper red in more shaded areas. But the default size of his eyes do look smaller, which I'm going to have to get used to. Even here, notice how all the surfaces shine and reflect Nefarious. So now, it appears our duo was looking for Nefarious, and what seemed to have caused all these rifts to go haywire. We have Dr. Nefarious to blame. Plus, he's holding onto the Dimensionator, which is capable of opening different dimensions with vortexes, you know. There's your confirmation. This game is happening after Into the Nexus. Canonically. It takes place after Into the Nexus. Here's the clip from the Gamescom livestream with Marcus Smith, creative director.
Fans have wondered, does this tie into the movie plot line, the game plot line? Like, how it would tell us in the Ratchet verse where this sits.
Yeah. Well, canonically, this is an extension of Ratchet Clank Into the Nexus, the 2013 game. But it's a standalone adventure. So it's one that, even if you've never played a Ratchet Clank game, you can get into it and you'll understand it and you'll enjoy it. For hardcore fans, we have a lot of nods. You're gonna see a lot of returning characters and planets, and see them all through a whole new light of multiple dimensionality.
They call this a stand-alone adventure, a game which will be very welcoming to newcomers, who got introduced to the series with the 2016 reimagining. For sure, Insomniac Games had this dilemma to deal with. Okay, we have a bunch of newcomers who got introduced to the 2016 game, and then we have the longtime fans. So which audience should we cater to with the next game? So that's why I believe they went with the stand-alone adventure route, where it's a game where newcomers will not get confused and understand the story, whereas longtime fans will understand much of the references. Although it's not strictly following Into the Nexus, sort of speak, some articles online are saying this is not a direct sequel to Into the Nexus. What they're trying to say is, well, whatever happened to Into the Nexus, I mean, it's not exactly going to continue off of that, but looking at the timeline, this does happen after Into the Nexus, if you understand what I'm trying to say. The timeline we are in is after Into the Nexus. Call it a sequel if you want, a continuation. It's part of the original timeline after Into the Nexus. You can all sleep peacefully now. By the way, here's an interview by Elise Favis, Washington Post. An interesting quote I had to include. Fans of the franchise are very invested in the storyline that we have been building. The last time we built within that universe was Into the Nexus. We're sticking to that storyline mostly because that's the one that we were building to this entire time. The movie and the 2016 Ratchet & Clank reboot, it was a retelling as told by Quark, a character who's largely unreliable. So we figured we'd just stick with the much more reliable canonical history that we'd been developing over time. This was said by Mike Daly, lead designer at Insomniac Games. The moment I saw the Dimensionator, I was like, aight, this is post-ITN. There will be familiar faces in Rift Apart, faces which longtime fans will recognize, said Insomniac Games. Now, with a Dimensionator at play, why does it look so different? The Dimensionator is usually a device you place over your head and expands quite immensely. But here, it's completely redesigned to suit Nefarious' needs. This is where we ask ourselves so many questions. Perhaps too many questions. If you've noticed, there seems to be a shard inside the Dimensionator as its power source. That to me looks like a Sereenox shard. A shard used to manufacture the Dimensionator according to Artemis Zog from the comics. If one hits a Sereenox shard with a negatively charged object, it opens a vortex. That's what happened in the comics. Ratchet used Azimuth's negatively charged wrench to hit the shard and open a vortex, which basically sucked up Artemis Zog to another dimension. If true, then Nefarious is very lucky to have stumbled on a very rare shard, by the way, such as the Sereenox. Then again, we are dealing with different dimensions, and Nefarious knows Ratchet & Clank. And Vivi, what are you trying to imply? What's the point? Yes, he knows Ratchet & Clank, of course, he knows the duo. You'll understand what I mean with the following scenarios I will put on screen. Let's go. A. Ratchet & Clank and Nefarious know each other. Easiest approach to all this is saying this is Nefarious from the original timeline we know, after he ditched the group at the end of All for One. Despite his new surge of emotion, you know, friendships and all, or, you know, being bored from always dominating the galaxy, like, he still wants to dominate the galaxy here. So, going back to that scene in All for One, I just can't help but keep reminding myself of that scene. So all of this comes down to good writing. As for the Dimensionator, well, Nefarious stole it from Clank at the end of Into the Nexus, and completely customized it and found a Sereenox shard. Last but not least, he fixed his crack after all these years. I know it sounds weird, or like an excuse. Like, fixing his crack after all these years, why did it take him so long? So yeah, that's why we moved to Scenario B. This could be alternate Nefarious who somehow still recognizes Ratchet & Clank, hence the no crack on his globe. I mean, he does say, I can finally be rid of you. This Nefarious, whatever universe he's from, heck, it could be the movie universe for all we know, he steals the Dimensionator from our universe and customizes it and all that. Insomniac Games was interviewed by Games Radar, and there's some interesting quotes on there. Thanks to the Dimensionator, you'll be able to travel to and explore new and existing planets within a single game, with some familiar locals seen through a different lens. Marcus Smith. Different lens would imply that whatever alterations we see on characters we know, well, we have the different dimensions to blame. So alternate versions aren't only applicable to, say, Sargasso, which was basically confirmed with a tweet back in June, but even characters can be alternates. Therefore, Scenario B wouldn't sound too far-fetched. However, here's where the theory falls flat. If this is alternate Nefarious and found himself in our dimension where he stole the Dimensionator from Clank, how did he even manage to enter a different dimension in the first place? Either A, he hit the shard, a shard he found at the Sereenox with a negatively charged object, and it opened a vortex, and then he realizes that a Dimensionator exists in this dimension, or Scenario B just doesn't make sense. So yeah, Scenario C. This is alternate Nefarious, with no crack on his head. Movieverse Nefarious or not, he's known Ratchet & Clank for some time. If this is the movieverse Nefarious, you know, he's tired of Ratchet & Clank, okay. That means some dimensions, well, time flows differently. Assuming this is Nefarious from the movie universe, you know, Nefarious from the 2016 reimagining. If so, enough time passed in that dimension for our duo to become popular and be hated by Nefarious. The fact that the Dimensionator looks different, I mean, why is it so different? It could be a Dimensionator from alternate Nefarious's dimension. Heck, the Sereenox is so rare. Finding it easily, let's say, well, that must have happened in that alternate universe. Basically, alternate Nefarious is confusing the Ratchet & Clank we know and love with the Ratchet & Clank he knew from his own dimension. Also, considering the fact this is early on in the game, it could be likely that our duo is completely unaware. The Nefarious we know is probably just chilling somewhere with Lawrence. The only way Ratchet & Clank would realize that this is perhaps alternate Nefarious? Well, they could just go back and check on their own Dimensionator. If it's still intact, that means, okay, this is another Dimensionator. The duo will start wondering, okay, what's up with that? Where did he find this Dimensionator? In the end, if this is a different Nefarious, we could see our Nefarious versus this different Nefarious, which would be the most hilarious thing ever. Who can perhaps scream Lawrence better? Where is Lawrence? Speaking of Lawrence, I mean, it's kind of weird to see Nefarious doing this solo. Did this alternate Nefarious even have a Lawrence? What do you think? So with different scenarios mentioned, which would you like to believe makes the most sense with all of the information we've gathered so far? Next, we got Ratchet with his burst pistol doing the delete this meme, and I love it so much. This shot does remind me of a shot from Size Matters, a game not developed by Insomniac Games. Now look at this boy, he's looking all epic. He aims right at the core, or the shard of the Dimensionator, and boom, Nefarious disappears to somewhere else on this planet, you'll see afterwards. Another thing I've noticed, it's not like Ratchet uses his burst pistol to completely destroy the Dimensionator. What I mean to say by that, he only shoots one bullet out of his weapon. If we go back to the comics, you need negatively charged particles, or an object, to activate the Sereenox shard. If that indeed is a shard, a Sereenox shard, then Ratchet remembered what he did during that sequence with Artemis Zog. So he thought, alright, I remember what I have to do here, let me just shoot one bullet which is negatively charged onto that shard, and Nefarious will go flying away. Also, looking at what's happening behind us, well, in front of us, the thugs, goons, just stood there. So I take it their boss is, in fact, Nefarious. But as for the actual thug leader we know, or goon leader, in this case, who knows? It's likely Nefarious hired the goon for less from another dimension. Perhaps Thugs for Less didn't want to join Nefarious. They're so desperate for bolts, they told themselves, alright guys, a random portal just appeared in front of us. Let's make some bolts in another dimension. Ah yes, that concept art I was talking about prior, you know, better angle and stuff. It appears to be this one from All for One as well. The fact we have so many references to their past adventures seems to indicate we are at least still in our own universe. Unless you involve the ancient city, that's where stuff gets a bit more difficult. I mean, the civilians also recognize us. So this could, in fact, be our dimension still. A Grunthor and Troglosaur appear through a rift from Sargasso, basically. Look at the way he just looks at us. His eyes. He's basically saying, help me. Ah yes, the Rift Tether. Ratchet's Rift Tether seems to have responded to the Dimensionator. Notice the glow on his glove. This happened because it destabilized reality. Mike Daly, lead designer, explained that dimensional travel, basically, the part where it utilizes the SSD, it's localized to chasing after Nefarious. It's reserved for special moments, when the dimensional damage is significant. Heck, the Rift Tether comes to play after shooting at the Dimensionator. We'll encounter this pretty often because it caused anomalies all throughout the galaxy. There's other dimensional damage out there, which Insomniac Games is really hush-hush about. I wonder what that means. Look at this shiny Clank, like, Ratchet has his own walking personal mirror. I mean, holy the way these characters are animated, I am so happy. No more static faces from the reimagining. Alright, with that said, let's move on to the second gameplay segment. Here's a shot-per-shot comparison. Instead of always saying Gamescom trailer, I'll just go with the dates, alright? We'll put the most recent one, the one from Gamescom, on the right side. So pre-alpha from June 11th will be on the left, and August 27th, the footage from Gamescom, on the right. The posters or panels in the back are now illuminated. They were shut off before. A rift appears to be absent. Honestly, that's probably just because, depending, of when exactly you get here. The orange rift itself looks different. It's now hollow in the center, and also appears to transition between yellow and orange. Now, the word orange when the pop-up appears makes more sense, because before, it looked yellow completely. The tether now has a reddish color as opposed to yellow. Overall, comparing both builds, the latest one has more contrast, I believe. Much sharper colors. The cracks even, the textures on the ground, have been altered. The trains also have more depth given to them. They plastered more details on the train, from the sides and the bottom. The glass panel even looks more textured than before. The idea is, moving from pre-alpha to the latest means you'll notice details that weren't there before. Dialogue has been changed unless it's randomized. We no longer hear, "Did you see that?" coming from Ratchet.
Did you see that?
That was rather exciting.
Clank has an idle animation where he throws punches, which is really adorable. I don't think that was shown in June. Here, for example, as we reach the top, the area we saw right in the middle before, like I said, well, the rift here looks more textured than before. For a moment, the health bar disappears. It's most likely a bug they'll sort out, hopefully. Once your weapon reaches level 2, the overall weapon damage increases. It takes roughly 3 seconds for the level up icon to pop up, to show up on screen I mean, and it pauses the game until you resume, just like the reimagining. I have one thing to say. The layout compared to the 2016 level up screen, it looks much nicer. 2016 was too simple, but part of me will always miss that little animation and sound from the PS2 era. Even at V2, it doesn't seem to look like that much of a challenge yet. I'm assuming the weapons will level up till V5, and if we do have a new Game Plus mode or challenge mode, for us longtime fans what we remember, the weapons could reach V10. As we clear out all the enemies, the door opens, and we make our way inside. On the left is the same art we saw on the brochure on the shelf before. This time we see it much bigger. The one on the right is the same one we saw before as well. As we keep walking, there's another one on the left. Unfortunately, we can't see what it is due to the wall and the way the camera is placed. We just can't see what it is. What's also made apparent in this latest gameplay footage, while those flowers we saw in the pre-alpha gameplay, they're not just decorations. Civilians actually get turned into flowers, or eaten by them. For some reason, these dimensional rifts are causing these people to turn into flowers. Looking far away in the background, a Grunthor just casually walks by. I have no idea if we can defeat it if we make it there on time. And comparing this Grunthor to the one we have in Tools of Destruction, it looks brighter in color. The model itself actually looks more faithful to the one we have in the 15th anniversary art book, especially paying close attention to the color patterns and its horns on its back. Okay. Here comes the whole, but Rift Apart got downgraded, man. It did not. I've read so many things on Twitter. People freaking out over this game being downgraded. That's not what I'm seeing. Look at the footage from June and now. Look at how much more shine and reflection the floor has. Is that a downgrade? I don't think so. Why are people even bringing out downgrade on Twitter? Well, it's not because of these floors here, to be technical. More so another level we see later. Even at that, I don't think this game got a downgrade. Civilians appear to have been switched out as well. The dialogue of the civilian has been extended with extra words. Instead of just saying it's Ratchet and Clank, there's "Look everyone, it's Ratchet and Clank."
Look, it's Ratchet and Clank! Everyone look, it's Ratchet and Clank!
Right there is concept we saw before, exactly the same one. The portal from which the sand sharks enter, we can see better their location of origin. I'm not saying we know what it is exactly, but my guess is Aradia, where we first encountered them in the very first game or the reimagining from 2016. Extra dialogue we hear from civilian like, "It's Ratchet and Clank, yes, and go go." As we throw our wrench in a unique way, usually we throw the wrench horizontally from all the games we had. Notice the civilian color, it's been swapped out as well. I noticed that the sand sharks have the same dying animation as the 2016 game, well maybe with some extra particles as they disappear. Everyone still feels that shockwave as a rift opens except for that one strong fella over there. Those three wall concepts we saw before, we can easily recognize them now. The travel cases have been placed in different spots, just ever so slightly. Yep, I gotta point that one out. It's not like a civilian pushed it, it's just someone from Insomniac Games thought, nah, I'ma place the cases right here. Exactly how I like it. The same concepts we saw before. Now did the Grunthor just get massacred? Looks like it just got spit out, digested. Or maybe this area does seem to have a bit of a museum vibe going on, so that skeleton right there could be for the museum. Hence the posters we have everywhere, come to think of it. Now what's sad here? I see a nice pile of crates over there. And that robot just ruins everything. Wasted bolts right there. Where did those crates go? Who knows? As we fall into a rift, the lighting definitely looks warmer than before. And I feel the lighting is much more focused on Ratchet as well. The Rift Tether especially looks darker than before. Like I've pointed out in my first in-depth analysis back in June, these rifts, well, the cracks, you notice, seem to depict areas we'll visit mostly, traveling this way. Which, as stated by Mike Daly, this travel is really localized to the story, like chasing after Nefarious. So yeah, as we enter the next area, the lighting has really been toned down. There's extra vehicles appearing on the right. Really, it might depend when you go through the portal. Maybe this is programmed to appear as you enter a new area. Here too, the HUD seems to glitch, where only the bolt counter stays. Another shot-per-shot comparison. You can tell how the shot on the right just has a warmer tone to it. Insomniac Games really went their way to change the civilians. Like, nah, I prefer blue instead of, you know, the color we had before. The orange rift here too looks hollow in the center, so yeah, they really altered the way these orange rifts look. Just the way Ratchet lands, look at that pose right there, he's ready to join the Avengers. Did you see that? When a rift opens somewhere, that huge shockwave causes even the lamps to sway, to move, to shake. Just like how we saw the trees in the beginning of the demo. Some civilians just stand there until Ratchet and Clank come near the Goon for Less. That's when they start freaking out. One thing I've realized looking at their eyes, they have the classic one color thing going on, where there's no pupil. In the movie, it's as if everyone was given human eyes. Ah, okay. The Enforcer. Now look at that animation right there, the way the weapon appears. The ammo capacity is unaffected, however, the icon for this weapon has been completely changed. Here's where the mechanical feature of the Dualsense comes into play. Depending on how far you press the trigger on the controller, you'll either shoot 1 or 2 barrels. Thanks to the Dualsense's adaptive trigger, they call it, If you press it all the way, you fire twice in a row. If you press it, let's say halfway, I think, you fire once. Okay, paying attention to the dialogue? Don't let him get to the boss, according to the goons. As stated before, it seems to imply that Nefarious did in fact hire these guys. To kill a goon, it takes 2 shots of the Enforcer. Now we managed to kill 2 goons at once. Almost 50% of experience is already gained for this weapon. The 3rd goon on the right side got hit by the explosive crate, but doesn't seem to have done too much damage. Like, notice how he still has his armor on. Now as for the jokes, okay, I'm not sure yet, I know it's a demo, but the one we had before, which I didn't mention, gains before trains and now pew pew time, I'm not too sure about the humor just yet. I really hope they get this right. Now that we have subtitles, we can finally know exactly what Ratchet and Clank were talking about. Did Nefarious really resurface after all these years just to try to take over the universe again? This is something we understood back in June. But you know, as a reminder, this should at least make us believe that we're us, the Ratchet and Clank we know. We knew Nefarious for years, hence Clank's reaction. Something I already dislike, there's too much dialogue on screen. The goon speaks, and then it skips Clank's subtitles. It gets overwhelming and you lose track of who is saying what. And plus, once the effects of the guns and the music gets loud, if you don't have the subtitles on screen, you'll have no idea what the characters are saying. I just hope this is something they consider and take into account. The ammo out of the crates now emit a hologram of said weapon, like the burst pistol here for example. Lovely addition, I really like it. As we get closer to leveling up our health, the gauge starts glowing. About 3 seconds later, once it's full, the Lombax gods gift us with more HP, 10 to be technical. Look at that animation, I love it! All those squares and all those lights, it's like that old animation we had, the electricity effect from the PS2 trilogy. I feel like it pays homage to that. As our health levels up, everyone and everything slows down, and they get like this neon filter on them. However, it doesn't seem to cause any sort of damage. In going commando, it will break and inflict damage on enemies. And up your arsenal, you would get this big flash of electricity when you would upgrade your health 10 times. Tools of Destruction, I believe, also had the ability to inflict damage and break stuff. So all I'm saying is, I'm surprised upgrading our health doesn't cause any damage. Now what's awesome here? Not only does your HP increase by 10, but the wrench also increases by 5. I take it that has to do with its damage, how much it can inflict on enemies. In going commando, we could find stronger wrenches, which was tied to the story. In Deadlocked, you could purchase wrench upgrades. In Secret Agent Clank, you would have mods given to your wrench. Ratchet here holds the Millennium 12 or the Omni Wrench, a wrench used by Ratchet from Quest for Booty and onwards. So now Rift Apart gives us the ability to upgrade our wrench as we upgrade our health. Clank says he must have more plans than he's telling us. Me this whole time, I was hearing Agorians. Nice. The Topiary Sprinkler ammo capacity hasn't been altered. The weapon gains experience as it sprinkles. Oh, you don't always have to use the quick select by pressing triangle. Notice how he switched from the Topiary to the Shatter Bomb. I take it that has to do with the D-pad quick select, although nothing is shown on screen to confirm the D-pad. But I assume it's what it's for. And what does the D-pad quick select do? Well, it gives you the ability to hold 4 weapons of your choice, depending of your playstyle, you know, for quicker switching. Shatter Bomb reaches level 2. It also upgrades damage. Ratchet's wrench is so strong you can break concrete. All those years of swinging his wrench around, the dude has grown in strength. The Enforcer, level 2, also damage increases. So basically all first 2 level ups of each weapon seems to indicate that we'll be able to upgrade its damage. I've noticed the letter on the panel went from blue to red. It happens when it gets hit by a shockwave due to a rift and goes back to blue as another wave hits. When Robo-Mutts are on their way, you hear the goons say, "Go get him, Robo-Mutts." I like that. It's a nice layer of interaction going on with everything that's happening. Now what's interesting, these mutts belonged to the Blarg. It's likely these mutts are from a different dimension where Drek still lives, and these mutts were either stolen or they lost their way. If Goon for Less is indeed alternate Thugs for Less, that means they probably acquired these mutts from Drek Industries from their own dimension. It's just something cool to point out. Now we reach the area we saw in the pre-alpha, and we clearly see Nefarious in that globe this time. It's like in the pre-alpha they didn't want to spoil Nefarious. From the cleaner footage we got on June 20th, clearly he wasn't there when he was supposed to be. So yeah, in order to avoid spoilers, they didn't include Nefarious. Oh, and how I had thought that we would face him near this area. But nope, we get sucked into a rift. Some might say, but Vivi, did you really expect to face Nefarious early on in the game? I mean, sure, it could be different. Just face him and he goes haywire, you know, his machine breaks down and then he comes back in the end, let's say. Okay, getting sucked into a rift here. The camera gets a bit wonky, as well as Ratchet the way he just travels. So one big difference already. We get sucked into nighttime of Torrent 4 after Megalopolis. In the reveal, we went from Sargasso to Torrent 4. Now what I said in my first analysis, yeah, this appears to be Torrent 4 from A Crack in Time. Perhaps this time, after Sargasso, we travel to Megalopolis. For spoiler purposes, they made it so the reveal trailer doesn't show Megalopolis. Plus, if you think about it, traveling to Night Torrent 4, switching the order around doesn't really affect the flow. We just hear Clank say the dimensions are weakening considerably. They could just take this and place it wherever they want. They have also seemed to have changed the layout a bit. There's less grind rails. The grind rails on the left are gone, and the one on the right as well. This tells me this has to do with performance. Less objects the game has to focus on loading, the better the game runs. And we'll see another example of this later. The grind rail we're on also seems to have reached a lower level than before. There's a missing pipe on the right, and I've noticed another glitch on screen, the rift particles. Notice how they also added fog in the left corner. Some might say, oh, it's their way to lower textures and hide the details as much as they can. Whatever the case is, I like the fog. It adds another cool ambience. Large Robot is completely absent. I don't know what that is in the back, but to me it looks like unloaded textures. But I don't know, it just looks too out there, it looks weird. Ratchet jumping twice on the grind rail is called a trick jump, by pressing XX twice in a row. We could never jump twice before on any grind rail, in any of the games we had before. Next, we re-enter what seems to look like Megalopolis for a short sequence. Right there in the back, we got two big parade balloons of Ratchet and Clank. A civilian before did mention that a parade was going on. So, if this is an alternate dimension, then that means in this dimension we have Ratchet and Clank doubles. All in all, we're being confused by the Ratchet and Clank they know, but in the end I might be completely wrong. The glass panel looks slightly darker in color as well. Next, we enter Daylight Torrent 4. This is something I talked about in my first analysis. The rock pillars seem to have moved around, and we notice more detail, or in other words, less fog, in this recent build. On the right, objects have been altered, like the screens for example. On the bottom, with the added crane in the latest footage, comes Swing Shot. Well, it's confirmed folks, that to me looks like a Swing Shot. It looks to have borrowed the looks of the 2016 version, but there's an extra. One is green and the other is yellow. I take it the yellow allows us to freely move around, just like Ratchet and Clank from 2002, you know, to reach perhaps hard areas. The rocky structure which was in the center at the bottom is missing, along with the crates we saw back in June. But that shouldn't tell us that we can't explore this place anymore. I'm sure we can. I mean, we have Swing Shot targets at the bottom, don't forget, on the crane. All I'm saying is the Swing Shot is already a clear indication that we'll be able to explore this place on foot. The gold bolt is gone. We had a gold bolt in the June footage, but now it's gone. The crane right behind the rift has been rotated, it seems. Now I won't point out every single crane, but it gives you an idea that objects have either moved or been positioned differently. Next area. The difference here? There's an extra purple object, bottom right corner. As we make our way through this mysterious city, some monitors turn red, depicting Nefarious, and they start to fall apart. We still got Megacorp and Protopets, so this most likely is an alternate dimension where Megacorp still runs actively, or it did start to run actively again after going commando. I could be wrong. Also, considering the fact that this is post-ITN, finally confirmed, oh, it feels great. We could be like, okay, Megacorp was dead and going commando, so if it's still active, this could be a different dimension. So like the footage from June, we got crates, meaning we'll be able to explore this place on foot, just like Torrent 4 from June, at least. Perhaps not with Ratchet and Clank, precisely, but you know, someone else. You know what I'm talking about. Juanita and Dallas, we did see him in June, but now we see him in better quality. These guys could be alternates, really. And look, Dallas has his hair back. In the 2016 reimagining, he was bald. Now looking at some concept art, I stumbled upon this. Concept for Metropolis from Tools of Destruction. Very interesting. Now in the 15th anniversary art book, released in June 2018, I keep saying that so we don't forget, here's an interesting paragraph. Reutilization of Concepts. These early concepts from the late PS2 and early PS3 timeframe were not used for the future series. However, many concepts created by Insomniac Games are saved and can be reutilized later on. Many elements of the planet depicted on the lower left returned for the Alderus Plains in Ratchet & Clank All for One. Okay. So it's possible this could be the suburbs of Metropolis. I mean, it does really have that aesthetic that would fit Metropolis, but at nighttime. Now this area Clanks ends up in not only looks to be the same lower suburban area I just mentioned, but this could very well be an alternate Metropolis corrupted by Nefarious. Next, we have Ardolis from Tools of Destruction. First off, objects have moved around and we have added fog in the background, hiding details we had before. This is exactly when people started saying, oh, this game got a downgrade. I don't see it that way. This to me seems like an attempt to put more detail or texture on what's closer to us. For example, notice how the wood on the ship looks better, at least in my opinion. The cracks are more evident, and notice that algae on the top step of the stairs. It's like they're hiding objects in the back that are far away in order to put more focus on what's near us. Heck, Ratchet properly rests his feet on the deck. He was floating before, going back to the footage from June. The lighting has also been shifted, the barrels all look lit up now. And Ratchet's ahoy? I like it. When the TNT explodes, you can also see how the lighting looks warmer, now as opposed to softer. So now, like I said before, this area with Clank, we come back here. The latest footage compared to the one from June, it looks about the same, maybe the light looks slightly different. But yeah, this is where we stumble upon Lombax Girl, whose name is not Abby.
Too many smart people on the internet. They'll figure it out right away.
She's not named Abby though, right?
In fact, Insomniac Games is very hush about this girl. I feel like they wanna showcase gameplay that's exclusive to her, along with the reveal of her name. Now, Insomniac Games gave us 2 hints. Looking at this scene with the girl, stuff we've theorized before, to be honest. According to the Games Radar interview. And with Rift Apart, we're trying to tell a story that involved seeing another version of these characters, who have never really become the heroes that they could be. So we immediately started talking about this duality of multiple dimensions, and then of course, we already had this device from the franchise that does what we need it to do, so we've spun a yard that incorporates the Dimensionator. Games Radar also believes that Insomniac Games seemingly hinted at this girl being an alternate Ratchet, something a lot of you have told me. A girl version of Ratchet. I mean, I do like to believe that theory. I'm not saying it's completely far-fetched. And going back to what Marcus Smith said during the Gamescom livestream, he said people will easily figure out this girl's name. I've heard Rachel. You know, Ratchet, a girl version of Ratchet being Rachel. But yeah, Marcus Smith did say that we could figure it out. As for female Lombaxes having no tails, I mean, this one clearly has a tail. Let me bring up a quote. I will say that in the dimension that Ratchet is from, and that we are used to, that very well could be a rule of Lombax physiology. So basically, not all dimensions have the same rule. Then again, I always feel like Pepper Fairbanks, the news anchor from A Crack in Time, could have simply assumed that females did not have tails. Female Lombaxes, to be precise. If they had gone with that excuse, I wouldn't have minded at all. With the whole dimensions thing, I guess they're safe. They get a pass. Now, like I said, they refuse to share more detail on this girl. But yeah, Insomniac Games seems to be hinting at her being an alternate Ratchet that never became the hero our Ratchet turned out to be. And yeah, she was confirmed playable, just to give you a reminder. That's why I said before that they might give us exclusive gameplay of her. At least that's the feeling I'm getting. Finally, Rift Apart. Confirmed to run at 60 FPS at lower resolution, most likely 1080p, and 4K 30 FPS support, according to a Famitsu interview. We haven't seen 60 FPS in a Ratchet & Clank game since Ratchet & Clank A Crack in Time from 2009. So that right there is big news for all of you. And yeah, I know it's funny, I put this big news at the end of the video, but yeah. So with that said, guys, this is it for my in-depth analysis. So yeah, what am I gonna say? Do your thing. If I missed anything important, anything interesting, please say so in the comment section below. Your own theories, your own questions, don't be shy, leave it all, okay? And yeah, I've been Vivi, and thank you so much for always tuning in. Until next time.